To look back on the week in politics, as we always do on a Friday, Dr. Maxine Newlands, lecturer in political science at James Cook University. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Good morning.
Nice to see you once again, and very timely. You're here today because just this morning we've been talking to Townsville's Mayor, Jenny Hill, about this letter that they've sent off. It's not just Townsville, but she's combined with the mayors of Cairns and Mount Isa to call on the state government to address a number of issues in the region relating to antisocial behaviour and youth crime, including this idea of a banned drinkers register.
That's right.
Similar to what happens in the Northern Territory, having it applied here. How unusual is it for mayors to come together on the same page and lobby government in this way?
Well, it's fairly unusual, but saying that, it's not unusual for Queensland. You won't be surprised to hear we like to do things differently.
We're a bit different. Is that because we're so big too as well?
Yeah,
it's a
I
big
think
state.
so. Yeah, and also it's about having a voice in the regions to, you know, the southeast corner. I mean, remember strategically... governance-wise, if you like, the local councils are an extension of the state government. So they're funded by, and they're sort of representatives on the ground. But if you think back to the Adani airstrip and around the approvals for Adani, the mayors all kind of lumped together then in support, and they went to India and did a bit of an investigation. So we have seen them come together before around economic issues. But this one is, it's really interesting. And also... when it was at the height, and we heard a lot in the news around Alice Springs, and the Prime Minister went, and lots of people, you know, did the usual handshaking. Then I believe the Chief of Police from Northern Territory actually flagged that what was happening in Alice is not unique to Alice Springs. It is actually happening in Cairns, Mount Isa and Townsville and other areas. And so this is sort of the next step. So it's not unusual in that respect, but it is for Australia for sure.
Jenny Hill said that this morning to us that her concern is that with strict laws in the Northern Territory, people are moving from the Territory, crossing the border, going to Mount Isa, and then those problems are starting to flow throughout the rest of the north as well. Yeah,
and that's a sort of logic. People are seeking whatever they are seeking. You know, it's like with jobs and things, people shift where the work is, and that then can sometimes cause knock-on effect for local councils, like issues around homelessness, as well as the banned drinking and the connections to crime. But so there are other consequences that local councils then have to address. And coming together as a unified force gives them a much stronger voice down towards the Premier.
And that will be another issue for the state government to think about. There's already been so much discussed this week about youth crime, but also new laws that have been brought in relation to family and domestic violence, coercive control, now becoming more of a criminal activity that people can actually now be charged on their patterns of behaviour in relationships. How significant has this week been for the government, do you believe?
I think it's been very significant. Obviously, we've been hearing from the opposition. This has been something particularly around crime. This has been a sort of it's not to dismiss it with this term low-hanging fruit, but that's because it is constant, and it is something that politically the opposition, not just the LNP but other parties as well, have been raising for a long time now with the Premier, and obviously they've been in power for 8 years. So this has sort of really become a point now. It seems to have got to the point where they are addressing it. Of course, there's lots of politicking going on in this, and it's not, because other people are saying it's an amendment to things that happened last year. But very interesting in the fact that prior to these changes to the proposal for the it's the Youth Justice Act, isn't it? It's very much been a social approach. There's been a lot of programs, a lot of work on country, a lot of kind of rehabilitation, education programs. But now it's gone the other way, and it's sort of 2 more prisons to be built, increase in police presence. So quite a shift, really, from the Labour government in the state to this more kind of... you've got the carrot and the stick. It's more the stick, and before it was the carrot, if you like.
Well, indeed. And, of course, this week there was that big news from the Premier that breach of bail was now going to be an offence. And that was something they'd resisted for a long time. It was something the opposition and other parties had been calling for a long time. What did you make of that change? I guess we call it a backflip or a U-turn or whatever. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, that one, because that's one particularly that was brought in under Campbell Newman. And to return, and it is effectively a backflip. It's not been turned that way, but yeah, to return to the breach of bail has been that sticking point. And the other thing as well that's come in is people, when they're in court, their previous, if they have any previous convictions for a similar crime, that can now be mentioned in court. So, the whole didn't used to happen like that. So these are quite stringent measures. Breach of bail and the mentioning of any previous criminal convictions is sort of really is quite a shift. And let's see. I guess some of it is probably a measure to try and address the criticisms from the opposition, and that's exactly the role of the opposition. But equally, will that be enough, or is it just too much of the stick and you do need more of the kind of more social, community-based solutions?
Certainly will be a long-running issue to keep talking about, but it has been a big one in the government circles in State Parliament this week. Dr. Maxine Newlands, our guest today, lecturer in political science at James Cook University. A terrible anniversary today, 1 year since the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, and during that year we've seen some very heartbreaking and distressing images from that part of the world. Yeah,
it seems amazing, doesn't it? When it happened a year ago, people were saying, a week, 2 weeks, and now we're talking at 365 days later. But we've also seen a bit of a ramping up of the international, not really diplomacy, but stance and politicking. So Joe Biden has been there. There's been debates in the UK Parliament House about more money. We've announced in Australia a big tranche of money that's going to be put to them. And things are really starting to build up now. A year ago it was because one of the reasons or one of the discussion points was that Ukraine was joining NATO and President Putin didn't like that. That whole process is now in play and going through. So, it's been sort of a long time to get back to the same point also at the moment. And it's a question of whether, because this is all about Western European security, is it a question of, are we unfortunately going to be talking the next 2-year anniversary and 3-year anniversary, or will there be some kind of cut-off,
And indeed, by next year's anniversary, will it be involving more countries? Could we see an escalation in this conflict?
And we're starting to see that kind of rhetoric and that kind of conversation. So Belarus has been saying that the Ukrainians are, mounting on their border. Moldavia are saying that they're getting quite concerned. There's a talk of it being President Putin wanting to make a statement on the 1-year anniversary, and but then Biden going in. It's sort of a cat and mouse game in a way, and it's all politics. And unfortunately, as you say, it's the poor Ukrainians that are being stuck in the middle. I think it probably will unfortunately escalate before it actually finds a solution.
Well, the issue too now is that what nations like Australia are providing. Yep. Does that start to become an issue of, you are in effect, supporting this war and we will take reaction against you because of that? Is that something we might expect to hear from Russia over the next time? Yeah,
we can, and we're already hearing it. So there's been conversations this week, I'm sure you've seen, with the Chinese government. So, whether they're going to... So they have effectively been supporting Russia by buying the products that the bans, the international bans on the gas and the oil and general Russian products. So they have been supporting it, the same as we have by arming and supplying the... what's the tanks called?
The Bushmasters.
Bushmasters, thank you, Michael. You always correct me, and now that China have said, well, they may, step in, that then becomes a real kind of, okay, then it's us and them, and we're talking Cold War language and, former communist country, you're really going to see an escalation there. And we are, our problem is always that we're a middle power. So we have traditional ties with the US and UK and Europe, and we're in alliances with that. But we also have a lot of trade and deals with China and this part of the world. So we're always kind of stuck in the middle with that. So big test for Anthony Albanese.
Makes me wonder too if the issue of international diplomacy, if sanctions really work anymore. Because in the early days they said, look, these sanctions are really hard. They're going to be against Russia. It will, cripple them. They'll, think twice about their further actions. Yep. 1 year on, still going on.
Still. And, we're just seeing, we also saw from ASIO this week, massive increase in spying and, so that the war front, yes, there is a physical one, but it's very much moved online as well.
Yeah, not the happiest thought.
No.
I guess internationally, or what can we finish on? Australia picked its act for the Eurovision Song Contest,
that's good.
that's nice.
There we go. Yes.
That's something that brings nations together.
Yeah, exactly. And, the sport as well. The footy's starting soon.
That's right.
That's good.
Thank you for helping us find the silver lining on what has been a distressing week or a distressing year, talking about the global situation. Dr. Maxine Newlands, thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael.